I want to go to a Facebook question by Henry. Part of the reason is we only have a few days left in which we are promoting Darwin's House of Cards by Tom Bethel, as well as Revolutionary, the story of Michael Behe, who was a reluctant revolutionary. It's a phenomenal story, but it completely undermines the evolutionary paradigm. It doesn't do it by preaching. When you see the film itself, you immediately realize if you've bought into the paradigm, you have been fooled. If you haven't bought into the paradigm, you have all the ammunition necessary to help people who have bought into the skin of the truth stuffed with a great big lie. But the question from Henry is this: could God have used the Darwinian evolutionary process taking billions of years to bring about all living things? A couple of things I would say about that. I mean, it doesn't take God 24 hours to do anything. It doesn't take God billions of years to do anything. And I think that the idea that God used evolution is probably the worst of all possibilities. It is one thing to believe in evolution. I think it's quite another to blame God for it. A couple of reasons for saying that. The biblical account of creation specifically says that God created living creatures according to their kinds, and that is confirmed by science. The DNA for a fetus is not the DNA for a frog. Instead of that, you have the DNA for a frog uniquely programmed for reproduction after its own kind. And therefore, while Scripture and science allow for microevolution or transitions within kinds, neither Scripture nor science allow for macroevolution, amoebas evolving into apes and apes evolving into whatever, an astronaut. And when I say science doesn't allow for that, I mean, we're a long ways past Darwin. We're in the neo-Darwinian epoch of time, and we still don't have vertical transitional forms. I mean, Darwin's tree of life has been uprooted by the Cambrian explosion, and there are many other reasons why in an age of scientific enlightenment we shouldn't buy into this kind of mythology. Not only that, but there's a second reason that I typically like to give, and that is Darwinian evolution is cruel. It is inefficient. And as a result of that, we ought to be surprised that Christians would defend the idea that this is the process which God set up in order for us to have evolution. In fact, no less a luminary than Nobel Prize-winning evolutionist Jacques Monod said, "The struggle for life, the elimination of the weakest, is a horrible process against which our whole modern ethic revolts." And then he went on to say, what I was paraphrasing earlier on, I'm surprised that a Christian would defend the idea that this is the process which God more or less set up in order to have evolution. A third point might be instructive, and that is that theistic evolution is a contradiction in terms. God can no more direct an undirected process than he can, that he could create a squared circle. And yet this is precisely what theistic evolution presupposes. So I think when evolution is fighting for its very life, rather than prop it up with theories such as theistic evolution, thinking people everywhere should be on the vanguard of demonstrating its demise. Far better that we follow the facts wherever they lead us, which is precisely what the intelligent design movement does. And this is, again, why I'm so excited about Darwin's House of Cards by Tom Bethel in a very humorous, informative way. He gives us all of the reasons why the evolutionary paradigm is a house of cards. I mean, it once was a well-fortified castle with elaborate towers, with moats, with battlements, and it remained in that condition for well over 100 years, from the publication of The Origin of Species in 1859 to the Darwinian Centennial, and then for perhaps 3 decades after that. But today, it more closely resembles a house of cards built out of flimsy icons rather than hard evidence. and liable to blow away in the slightest breeze. I mean, one of those icons is the ape to man icon. And this is one of those icons that people buy into uncritically. So you see it on the cover of Time magazine or Newsweek or whatever, National Geographic, and the icon becomes the argument. It becomes a dogmatic assertion as opposed to being a defensible argument. But if you look at the icon, you find out that the icon has all kinds of transitional forms which are based on conjecture, like a tooth found on a farm. And then with a little imagination, you attach the tooth to a jawbone, and the jawbone to a skull cap, and the skull cap to a skeleton. And then by the time the story hits the press, well, you not only have, in this case, I think it was Nebraska Man, but you have Nebraska Mom. All of that from a single tooth. And later on, in the case of Nebraska Man, they found another tooth, but in this case, it was attached to a jawbone and attached to a skull cap and attached to a skeleton. And the skeleton turns out to be the skeleton of an ancient pig as opposed to one of the great transitional forms that supposedly proves that we evolved in this fashion. And you'd think that over time mental digestion would improve, but that has hardly been the case. In 2009, so this was less than 10 years ago, we had Darwinius Maselli. Most people don't know Darwinius Maselli by that name. They know it by a nickname, Ida. And they know about it as it had been dubbed the eighth wonder of the world, the link between humans and the rest of the animal kingdom, and the most important fossil discovery in 47 million years. Well, what happened? Well, today, no one talks about Ida. Ida has fallen into disfavor. Evolutionary scientists are uniformly convinced that she plays no role whatsoever in human evolution. And many of these icons could be named. Pithecanthropus erectus, Piltdown Man, of course, the famous fraud and forgery, Peking Man. But the icon has become the evidence, and rather than simply buying into an icon, we had to look at it critically. And again, do what the intelligent design movement does, not presuppose one thing or the other, but simply follow the truth wherever it leads. Darwin's House of Cards by Tom Bethel helps you do just that, as well as Revolutionary. This is precisely what Michael Behe did. He followed the truth wherever it led, and that uprooted Darwin's tree of life in his mind and set him upon a brand new path. Again, the story is compelling, and it is available on film, Revolutionary, available for those who support the ministry all this month. Check it out on the web at equip.org. I want to say just a couple of other things in this regard as we close out this segment and come back with the quote of the day and more answers to your questions. If you are a supporter of the ministry and you have maybe thought about joining CRA's monthly support team, this would be a great time to consider joining the Special Forces or the Green Berets, as we like to call them at the Christian Research Institute. So if you give occasionally, think about joining CRA's monthly support team. If you've never given, think about getting off the bleachers and into the game. And if you've given one gift a year, we're grateful, but consider giving 2 or 3 gifts. That would equate to hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be invested in ministry, put another way, invested in the lives of people, not only for time, but also for eternity. So consider standing shoulder to shoulder with us in the battle for life and truth. We'll be back in just a few moments with more of the Bible Answer Man broadcast. The number to dial to get your questions answered live on the broadcast today, 888-ASK-HANK. We'll be right back.